In the rugby league equivalent of shooting Bambi, former Kangaroo and Foxtel commentator Greg Alexander has come out this week and said that Johnathan Thurston, future immortal, has played the game a little bit too long. He's a little bit slower. He's a little bit off the pace. Now, Will, is that fair?
First, I was just really disappointed of them, when I heard Brandy's comments. A respected player, a respected journalist, commentator of the game the last 10 years, and you think he'd have a better gauge on the game. And he's been watching JT probably since he debuted in 2002. And for him to have them comments now, I just don't see where he's getting it from. If you just go on strictly by the eyeball test, JT's not playing bad football. You've got to look at the Cowboys and how they're going. They're 1-4. They're playing pretty bad football at the moment, and he's the first one to admit it. So I just don't think he's not dropping the ball. He's not setting up plays. His kicking game's still good. He's making his tackles. He's leading the team around. He's not doing anything that suggests that he's fallen off. I think I would be the first one to say if JT's hanging on too long. I'm a very good friend of his, and I'm not being biased or anything like that. It's simply from my point of view, and a lot of journalists and a lot of current players and ex-players see it from my point of view because it's just embarrassing, and I just think it's disgraceful what he said.
Playing devil's advocate, obviously Greg Alexander's employed to do a job, and he's a commentator, and his job is to commentate. Now, he has obviously seen something in Johnathan Thurston's performance that he feels is holding the Cowboys back. Now, I know you don't necessarily agree with that. You think the Cowboys are being let down in other areas.
I think, people have really glued on to how the Cowboys play. They've had 4 massive campaigns. They've won a premiership. They've been to a grand final. They've lost that. JT's been injured for the last 10 months. So a lot of players seem to understand and sort of get the blueprint of how you play. They know they've got to get on to Taumalola. They've got to get on to Matt Scott. You've got to get on to Cooper and especially JT and Morgan and shut them guys down. So I think it's got to come down to the coaches. Paul Green's got to come up with plan B. You can't put it all on this kid's shoulders. He's not a kid, he's a young man. But you can't put it all on JT. You've got Morgan there, you've got Coot, you've got these other blokes, you've got Cooper, all these leaders in these great positions and great players up there. But people have glued on to how they play. So change the game plan just a little bit to suit how JT plays.
I think if you look at last year especially, Taumalola was regularly making 200 metres.
Yeah.
Now, he's been well down on average this year. And so if your forward pack's not going forward, I don't care who you are, as a halfback, you can't do well. And I think he's been let down by his forwards this year.
You ask Andrew Johns, you ask any of the great number 7s, if their forward pack is not going forward and getting dominated.
I'd just ask all of your halfbacks, wouldn't I?
Ask Brent Sherwin, he played behind a great pack, so he looked great. JT is not the sort of player who's going to grab the ball and run for 200 metres a game.
No.
Matt Scott, Jason Taumalola, all these sort of blokes, Jordan McLean's just got injured, but you've got Scott Bolton, Gavin Cooper. You've still got a formidable pack. They were touted as the best forward pack in the comp at the start of the year. I still think they are one of the best packs in the comp. But they're just down on a bit of form. It's round 5.
I think, the way Thurston's been going as well, you can't fault his effort. He's been trying, he's been involved in every game. How long does it take for a player to come back from a serious injury like that? Should people be giving him another couple of weeks to get back into it?
No, I don't think so, John. JT's harder on himself than anybody. And he would never, ever wear that jersey or put it on if he wasn't 100% fit. He puts everything into how he plays, his defence, everything, his kicking game, his leadership, all his skills he leaves out on the table. And he leaves out on the ground. So I was just really disappointed in what Brandy said because I can't see it and nobody else can see it. There's no other journo or any other player backing him up saying, JT's fallen off. He's nowhere near that. We should be thanking God that he's still in our game. The things that he does for the game on and off the field is something that no other player has done or is doing. He's an ambassador for the Indigenous. He's a great role model for young kids. We should be thankful every time that he's putting that headgear on and that jersey and stepping on the field every single weekend because no one else is going to do it like him. When Andrew Johns left, he picked up the pieces and he's been carrying the mantle for the last 12 or 13 years and he cops that. I think it's disrespectful, and I just think it was out of line. I just don't agree.
Look, I think that Johnathan Thurston has earned the right to have a couple of bad weeks, even if he wasn't. But I can understand what you're saying. I think that Paul Green coming out and saying that he's glad that Greg Alexander said that, because you wait until next week. And that's the sort of player that Johnathan Thurston is. He's going to come out this week and he'll put his best foot forward.
You can see how JT, how mature he is. When they asked about Brandy's comments, he's like, what did he say?
He just
Everyone's
said, I can have an opinion.
he's entitled to his opinion, and so is everyone else. I'm entitled to my opinion, and same as you, and so is the rest of the world. If you want to put yourself out there like that and make comments on one of the greatest players ever, expect backlash.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty safe to say Greg Alexander's going to have a fair bit of egg on his face by the end of the year.
Yeah, I think so. It's just not in Brandy's makeup. I've never seen him as that sort of person that wants to cause controversy or bag other players. That's why he's so respected, because players love Brandy, because he's never been that sort of bloke that's, really had a crack at players or anything like that, because he's a former player and he understands, the amount of pressure that's on these number sevens, because he was a number 7 himself. So, just hearing it from him, it was very disappointing.
Well, we all need controversial views in the media, William, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here now.
Exactly.
There's been a lot of talk in the NRL this year so far about the number of penalties that have been given. It's been the highest penalty per game rate that the NRL has seen, up around 20 penalties per game, culminating in the Storm and the Sharks, where there was 30 penalties, which was a record. Now, Will, are the referees just policing what they're told to? Is it?
Yeah, I think they are. I can play, as an ex-player and now retired. I can see it from these guys' point of view. They've gone into pre-season and they've told the players, this is the rules. We're going to penalise if you leave the line before the ball has cleared the ruck. And that's why all these penalties are for. You know what I mean? So they've sticking to what they're saying, which I've got to commend them. That game in Melbourne versus Cronulla, that was the line in the sand. I think every single player after that went, we can't play like this. They would have went back to their coaches. The coaches would have given them a massive big rev up and said, look, the most disciplined team wins. But I just think the players need to fall in line. The refs aren't backing down, and I think the players are slowly sort of gravitating to the rules. It takes a while for us to sort of clue on, and we'll figure it out. The players will figure it out how to sort of get around this rule.
It does take you a while.
But it does take a while, and it's mainly happening to the middle forwards, because usually out wide they're not getting penalised, but right in the middle is where the game is won and lost. And what's been happening now is that I don't think a lot of people at home don't really understand why these penalties are being blown and why these edge back roles like Tarek Sims and Boyd Cordner are getting these one-on-ones with the number 7s. It's because you can't put any inside pressure. Usually if the ball hits the deck, if you're a forward, you want to be fluent in your up and back. You don't want any breaks. So these guys are going back and they've got to wait for that 1 second to clear the ruck. And it's killing people because you want to go up and you want to sprint back up. You want to go back, sprint back up, and getting that fluency. But it's breaking up the whole game. And then you get into these fourth tackles, and then they're blown a penalty, and it starts again. So I can see from a spectator's point of view, because I'm a spectator now, it's frustrating. But hopefully the players can clue on. I think they have been in the last couple of weeks. They've been a lot more disciplined. The football's has been a lot better. But if they keep being undisciplined, you're going to end up losing games. And at the end of the year, you're going to be just kicking yourself that you missed out on the 8 because it's cost you 20 penalties.
The stats are sort of showing that only 30% of teams that are losing the penalty count are winning the game. So it's obviously going the way of sides getting penalised out of the game. Now, Andrew Johns had a pretty massive spray about the whole thing, saying that it was ruining the game. Now, what the NRL's saying is that these rules have been brought in to make it more flowing. And I think what Luke Lewis has come out and said is that now sides have got to go back to the drawing board and change what they're doing. So I think it's working in terms of what the NRL does.
Yeah.
But is that right? I mean, you're a player.
I just don't understand how players have to go back to the drawing board now. When these refs, I know they come to pre-season and tell them at the start of pre-season what you have to work on.
Yeah.
So it's like the players are just gone, whatever. It's going to be a little bit of a fad, like it usually is with the wrestling, and then the refs get bored, and then they just throw it out the window, and then the play the ball is going to be the same. I think that's what the players would have been thinking. I would have been thinking that, But they've just gone, you know what, we're going to stick to it. We want the game to flow a little bit more. And when the game does flow, you're seeing some great football. The Warriors are playing the best football I've ever seen. You know, and they're playing disciplined football. And look at the way they do. Look at the way they're doing it. Like teams can't handle them.
No.
They want the game to be more flowing, and they're trying to eradicate the wrestling for years, and it's doing that.
Yeah,
because
that's
you're
true.
getting more one-on-ones. You've seen Tariq Sims get one-on-one out wide. You've seen all these back rollers score these tries because they can't get any inside help, because as a middle person, when I was playing, I had to get off the line so quick and try and get at halfbacks so they can pass the ball properly, so they can pass the ball quicker. But now they're having 1 or 2 seconds. 1 or 2 seconds is a lifetime with the ball, and then the 6 is getting the ball, and then the back row is isolating the 7 because he's got no inside help. Like usually, you know, Matt Gillett is one of the best edge defenders in the whole game. They're scoring some tries on that right edge of the Broncos, all because there's no inside pressure, and all because of that one rule. It's been a big ripple effect throughout the whole league.
So do you think now that what the NRL's trying to do is going to come off in the next few weeks, as people adapt to these new rules, they realise that they are getting penalised? Do you think that the whole game's going to change?
Well, I think so, and I think for the better, because usually the middle guys, we cheat.
Surely not.
No, we do. We'll try and find every single shortcut in the book. We'll have our foot on the line. We'll try and get off the line as quick as we can, put pressure on the 9, put pressure on the 7, so the 7 is passing the ball straight away. Now the 7's got 1 second, which is about 2 or 3 steps. And that's a lot. And you don't want them taking that ever.
Yeah.
So now the 7's got a lot of time, the 6, and now these back rowers are running the perfect line.
Yeah.
And you can't stop it. If you run a play that is unstoppable and perfect, you can't defend it, because a guy who's about 6'3", 105 kilos, as quick as a back, running at a smaller bloke, it's 9 times out of 10 you're going to score. And you can see that happening on a lot of edges where Tariq Sims is destroying people on that left edge because he's getting one-on-one and he's running good lines, and most of good back rows are doing that now. If you can execute it in the middle, you'll get the joy out wide.
So do you think one of the reasons Melbourne aren't doing as well is because they're policing that?
Well, I think these guys, a lot of coaches, they have meetings and they all want to pick on Melbourne all the time, whether it's wrestling, them jumping the line, everything like that. It's all to stop Melbourne because they've been so dominant for the last 10 years. And last year, everyone's going, oh, they're offside, every single set. People were calling it, they're jumping. So you can always hear that from the sideline.
Yeah.
And they were doing it because they were getting away with it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much the refs going, you know what? We can't just pick on Melbourne. We've got to eradicate the whole league. And it's slowly working. But I wish that the players had a clued on straight away. But as an ex-player that just retired a couple of years ago, it does take a while because they always promise stuff at the start of the year, and it sort of disappears after about 3 to 4 weeks. But this rule's here to stay, and I think in the long run, you'll see some better football.
And maybe for Melbourne, the loss of Cooper Cronk and these new rules will be the perfect storm.
Boom, boom, ting.
The soap opera of rugby league has continued in a big way over the last week, with a little fallout between 2 of the coaches, Wayne Bennett and Nathan Brown. Nathan Brown made some comments after the Knights had beaten the Broncos last weekend, referring to Wayne Bennett's little head. Now, Will, it was probably, my first reaction was to laugh. It probably, in the cold light of day, wasn't the best of things to say, but he has apologised.
I think what Brownie's done, what he said is wrong, and he's come out and he's apologised, and he's manned up to it, and he knows he said the wrong thing because it wasn't about football, it was Wayne's personal life.
Yeah.
And I think he overstepped the mark there, and he's the first one to admit it, and I think he's done I've got to commend him on coming out there and saying, he did say the wrong thing. He's spoken to Wayne. If Wayne actually had a problem with him, he wouldn't have answered the phone.
Yeah.
So for him to even talk to him and then talk it out like men, I think that's it's a credit to Wayne and to Brownie himself. But, if you're going to say something like that, I'm pretty sure he's done the right thing and get on the front foot, because I think they would have been talking about that all week. Yeah. And Wayne won't comment about it because it's his personal life, and it would have kept rolling on and rolling on. They would have built some absolute garbage sort of him versus him, and it just would have been
where it started was Wayne Bennett made a comment with regards to the Newcastle club about that Nathan Brown essentially had unbuilt what he built. Obviously, they've had some pretty lean years over the last few years. corresponding almost exactly to you leaving the club, to be honest. The wooden spoon started flowing. Normally it's the other way around. But I think Wayne Bennett, whatever he did at that club, he was hamstrung, obviously, as you would know better than most, by the owner of the time and a few other things. So I don't think it's fair to put Newcastle's problems on Wayne Bennett, but I also don't think that Nathan Brown's done a bad job.
No, I think Brownie's really recruited well, and I just don't think you can put anything on Wayne. You know, we got to the Final Four one year. You know, the first year we had a few injuries. The 2014 was Alex McKinnon situation. So the 3 years that I had there was the most enjoyable 3 years I've had for a long time in my career. And you know, words were said, you know, like, and taken out of text, and you know, they can build whatever they want. Whatever Wayne says, it's times 1,000, because he rarely says anything about the Newcastle situation and everything like that. And it's a sensitive thing for him, because he's a successful man, and he didn't win a premiership. You know, we were close, and then, you know, the Alex McKinnon thing, and that's a sensitive thing to bring up. So, you know, we had a great time in Newcastle, and, you know, Wayne's comments to Brownie would have hurt Brownie's feelings.
Yeah.
And he was probably pretty pumped up after the game, and then just, you know, dropped that sort of comment after the game. I thought it was actually funny, but it was classless.
It was too much. Yeah. And I think, you know, you can understand when emotions are involved that people say things that they probably shouldn't. You would understand that.
Well, I think with Brownie, I mean, like, you can't bag Wayne. You can't say he's a bad coach, a bad person, anything like that. But the only thing to sort of attack him was on that personal note.
Yeah.
So that's the only way that Brownie probably thought, you know, I might get one up on him. You know, he's won 7 premierships. He's won the Australian games, Queensland games, one of the greatest coaches arguably of all time. How do I get him? Because I've just beaten him at their home ground. Wayne said some comments that hurt his feelings and Newcastle people feeling. All the Novocastrians were blowing up, and, you know, they were backing Brownie to the hill, hating on Wayne. I could see it all over Twitter and Instagram and all over social media. So I can see it from Brownie's point of view, but Brownie could not say anything else but to personally attack him, and he regretted it straight away, and he got on the front foot, and he's just said, look, I've said the wrong thing, and it takes a man to do that, so good on you, Brownie.
One thing that was driving around as well was people saying, like, I guess not making excuses for it, but saying, oh, maybe he meant that Wayne Bennett had a short-term view, not a long-term view. That's what he was talking about. Now, it was obvious what he was referring to, and I think for Brownie to come out and say that and admit it and apologise for it shows a lot of strength of character.
It does. I mean, I know Brownie personally, I know Wayne personally, and they're both great men. And you know what? Kudos to Brownie and Wayne for settling it like men, and not letting the media take control and build this big feud, because it's done.
In the wake of the Greg Inglis scandal, Willie, my friend here, put a post on Instagram questioning some of the comments made by 2 journalists on a Foxtel program. Now, they have now penned a letter in response, or at least one of the journalists involved, Dean Ritchie, has. Now, Will, is that the first time you've had a letter for a while?
Well, I haven't received a letter like this. Well, I think I was in year 10 when the teacher wrote my dad a letter saying, why is Willie still in school? But I'll tell you why the public vitriol is, because the absolute garbage that he was spilling on TV. Like, he was discrediting Greg Inglis. Yeah. I don't know how you discredit someone or credit someone. I don't know, you know, what's the difference? Like, you said that he might have been concussed and he didn't know what he might have heard. Is that not discrediting someone? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Like, I don't understand.
Well, the thing was, and this is my take on it, I saw 2 men discussing on a panel.
I seen 2 fucking geniuses. That's what I seen. That's what I seen. 2 fucking geniuses.
The other one, Dan Ganane, he then started making comments with regards to, would Greg have reported it if it was made by a player? Now, I understand he was just questioning that. It was probably just something. But the tone of both of their comments was saying, was he concussed and would he remember? And also, would he have reported it? Now, for me, I look at that. They are 100%, whichever way they say it, they are 100% questioning whether or not Greg Inglis had the right to report that.
And that is discredit, isn't it? You know, so I heard these 2 genius reporters going on TV, and just like, they just were just simply out of line. Everything they said, I was shocked when I was listening to it. So I had to rewind it, and then put it on my Instagram story because of how pathetic it was.
Yeah.
Like I was so angry in what they were doing. They were discrediting Greg Inglis, saying, "Oh, he might have been concussed. He mightn't have heard. He mightn't have done this. Oh, what would happen if other players had called him that?" It doesn't happen in the game. I mean, like there's been a couple of instances when people have reported it, but no one would ever say that.
Given
Call someone a black dog, that is ridiculous.
I think one thing, and obviously you're getting pretty passionate about it again, which is understandable because, you know, you've had, I mean...
Who writes a letter?
Well, regardless of that, he's made some pretty, he's essentially questioned your integrity and your honour there. So I can understand why you're upset. The thing that upsets me, being, you know, a friend of yours and a friend of Greg's, is that I don't agree with what he's written there. I don't see the inaccuracies in what you said. Greg Inglis was concussed. It's true, he didn't finish the game, but he knows what he heard. Yeah. And he reported that as such. Now, whether he reported it directly after the game and he was concussed then, there was a process that lasted for a period of a week. Now, in that process of a week, he then reported what had happened and he was not concussed for a week. So he was able to accurately bring across exactly what had happened to him and why he felt the need to report it. So for him to then turn around and say that, you know, he was concussed, he is trying to discredit Greg Inglis, 100%.
It's black and white. It's ridiculous. Like, I just don't understand why I get this. I don't even know. I only read it last week. That's why I'm sort of like getting it on the show like today. Like, it's like, are you so sensitive? Look at all this crap that you're writing.
I just think, you know, it was an emotive issue and Greg Inglis being the person that he is, he's tried to, he reported it and he hasn't turned into a big thing, but you and I both know how affected he was.
Well, I was so disappointed. You know what I mean? Like, I've never seen him more disappointed. And when these two fucking geniuses were reporting on it, it was some of the worst journalism I've ever seen. And there's some really crap journos out there. Just stick to print or radio or whatever you're doing. Leave it to the professionals if you want to get on TV. I mean, you should have a look at guys like Paul Kent, Andrew Webster, all print, all ex-print guys, and they've crossed into TV, and they come across great. You know, and they've got credibility. And I just think what he did that on that day just lost all credibility in my eyes. Look, it was on Fox Sports. It's a racial slur that got thrown at Greg Inglis. You got two Australian people plus the mediator. Everybody is Australian, white, Caucasian. Not one person was Aboriginal or any sort of colour. So it seems like they don't really have the right to say anything or to even try and, it's bigger than rugby league. You know, it's racism has become, it's ridiculous. In this PC world, in the world that we live in, for him to get called a black dog, for you to even say anything that discredits Greg Inglis's claims that he wasn't called a black dog if he was concussed, it just sets us back even more. It's ridiculous, you know. Like we've come so far as a country, and when it comes to racism and everything like that, I've copped it before. A lot of my mates have copped it, all minorities and that. And when I heard it, and that's why I'm so pissed off when I seen it and when I heard it, and when he tries to discredit it, and why I'm even bringing it up now, because it cuts deep.
Well, to be honest, looking at the way he's responded, a cynical person could say that he looked back on that and realised that he could be seen as what he's now saying it's not. He doesn't mention Ghanaian's comments in that. I think potentially he's just trying to cover himself because he realises that he does come across as someone who is making comments about Greg Inglis in a disparaging way.
Yeah, I just think if you're going to make comments like that, just be careful. It's racial slurs against Indigenous people is bigger than the game. Don't comment on it. You're not in a position where you should even discredit or even talk about it. Talk about it, trying to find the bloke in a positive way for Greg Inglis, not to try and discredit him, say he was concussed. Come out there and try and say, find the blokes and kick him out of the game. That's it.